friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I've got a card for you using Mama Elephant's Little Line Agenda. So I've stamped those images out in Lawn Fawn jet black ink on Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock. And I'm going to be coloring to match some pattern paper from the Echo Park Welcome Baby Girl 6x6. So I'm going to tear out a sheet to use as an inspiration and tuck it under my cardstock panel so I can color with my Copic markers. The first combo that I'm going to be using is R00, R01, and R02. And I wanted to pull in those peachy pinks that are in this pattern paper, but also kind of make these pots look like terracotta. If I were coloring not to match pattern paper, I would probably use the E90s, but I think these are a little bit closer to that pink, but it's still going to kind of give me that look of a terracotta pot, almost like a faded one. So I started with the R02 on the outside edges. I also added in some shadow under the lip of the pot. And then I'm blending toward the center with the R01, and I'll use the R00 for my highlight. I'm also going to color my images twice, at least all the pots, because it just helps smooth everything out. That R00 has a ton of colorless blender in it, so it really pushes that R01 back. So I do think that that second layer just helps everything look more blended and cohesive. Then I'm going to skip to the one all the way on the end, and I'm going to color that one in much the same way. Since everybody's facing forward and all the pots are equally round, the highlight is going to be on the exact same place, and so with the shadows. So I did the two on the ends, and then I'm also going to do the one in the center with this combo. I decided to mix things up and do the pots in two different tones, but I wanted to keep it pretty simple and let the pattern paper also shine. So I just went with the two different shades of pots, but I think it'd be fun to do like a whole rainbow of pots if you wanted to. So I'm doing that second layer on that middle pot now, and then I'm going to switch up my combos to a darker version. So it'll still kind of look like a terracotta almost, because these are more orangey reds, but it'll just be a lot more bright. So I went with R12, R14, and R17. So I'm starting with the R17 now and doing my shadows exactly like I did on the other pots, with the darkest on the outside edges, and then blending out with my midtone, which is now the R14, and then finishing with the R12, which is my lightest. And again, in this case, that R12 has so much colorless blender in it that that second layer is really important. Otherwise you get kind of like almost like a bloom of color where that lightest shade just pushes the others toward the outside edge, and it just doesn't look very blended. But that second layer really does improve that. So I did that one, and then I'm going to go and do the last pot in this combo as well. So it's not 100% perfect match for the reds that are in that pattern paper, but I wanted it to have that terracotta look. For some reason, that was just what I had in mind. So I did just go slightly more orange leaning, which I think when the yellow part of the roses, those watercolor roses, kind of combines with that red, it is fairly similar to the color combo that I ended up choosing. But if you wanted more of a perfect match, I would go with some cooler reds, like maybe the R20s, R20, R22, R24 for the lighter pots, and then R22, R24, and R29 for the darker pots. And for the bunnies, I'm going to start with a base coat of E000 and E00, just some very quick shading so that I can add some color to them with different little spots and details over top. I'm going to skip over the one in the center because I wanted him to have a little brown bottom, so he's not going to get this lighter version. So I use that E00 and blend it out with the E000, and then for the little details, I'm going to go with the E30s. I chose E31, E33, and E35. And this is when I just kind of play and have fun and try different patterns and things and just see how unique each of these little bunnies can be. So I started with the E35 as the darkest. I'm blending out with the E33, and then the E31 is going to be my lightest shade. For the one with glasses, it was a little bit trickier because I wasn't sure where exactly I wanted to put the color, if I wanted it to creep down into his glasses or not. At first, I decided not to, but it looked kind of odd that way, so I ended up bringing that color down a bit more into his glasses, just so you could kind of see that they are clear. And I also gave him one brown ear. And then the next little bunny, I'm going to give him a completely brown bum, just like I said. So I put the shadow down at the top edge of the pot, and then also a little bit on his tail. Blend it out with the E33, and then use the E31 for the highlight. And then for the fourth bunny, I decided to give him like a little ring around his eye and then a couple of other little spots. So just using those same 3 shades again until those look nicely blended into the rest of the fur. And then for the last little bunny, I'm just going to give him some little small random spots. So while I was doing this, I also was coloring a second sheet off to the side, pretty much exactly the same, except for the bunny spots. I had so much fun doing this one that I decided to do an extra one. So I'm actually going to be making 2 cards in this video, and I'll show you that other sheet when I get to the end of the coloring. So now I'm going to use R20 and R11 to give them some rosy cheeks. Just real quick, adding a little oval with the R20 and then tracing around the edges of that with the R11 to get that to blend out a bit. And then for the little plants, I wanted to go with that kind of dusty olivey green. So I chose BG93 and BG96. So I did the grasses down below with both shades, and then the little kind of, I don't know, fern type plants with just the lighter shades since they were super small. And then for the flowers, I wanted to pull in those yellow flowers in that pattern paper. So I went with Y13 and Y15. And then I just went back to the R20 for the noses and also the centers of the flowers, all super small. I went over the eyes of the bunnies with a black Sakura jelly roll pen to make them nice and bright and shiny, all except for the one with the glasses because I have this new clear glaze jelly roll pen. So I wanted to use that on the glasses and see how it worked because this was my first time using it. And I really liked it because it dries way quicker than like glossy accents, but still gives you that same shine. So there is the first page and the second page of bunnies that I colored. So I'm going to trim both of these out with their matching dies. So I needed to choose another print for the second card, and I was flipping through the same pad and decided to go with this really pretty floral. And then I wanted something that would be contrasting on both of these for another layer. So I was just going back and forth between a few different ones. I really liked this pink and white gingham and also this pink with tiny little scattered white hearts. But I ended up going with the gingham. I thought it looked a lot nicer. It just added an extra bit of pop against those 2 bolder prints. So I'm going to trim all of these down. So now I'm going to work on my focal panels. I've trimmed 2 pieces of Spectrum Noir cardstock down to be 2 1/4 inches tall by 4 1/4 inches wide. And I'm going to use the new Saltwater Taffy Distress Oxide ink. I want to create a really simple but effective background. So I'm just pressing that onto an acrylic block and adding some water to that. and doing some splatter detail all across those two panels. That's all I'm going to do. I just wanted something that would give me a little flecks of color in the background, but not distract from my adorable images, and also not take like super long. So this is just a really quick and easy way to build a background that is going to be unique and interesting and perfectly match the coloring. So I set those aside to dry, and once they did, I popped them in my MISTI. I'm going to stamp with VersaFine Onyx Black ink so I get a really bold sentiment. And I'm using the sentiment from that set that says, "Sending positive vibes your way." I think this works for a lot of different occasions, so I thought this would be a good one. And since I have everything lined up, I decided to do the same sentiment on both panels. So I'm going to just pop the other one in my MISTI and stamp that down once again. Everything is perfectly positioned. So I'm going to stamp that down twice. For some reason it seemed to be stamping a little bit darker on the ends, so the second time I just gave it an extra push in the center to make everything nicely even and inked up nicely. For the card bases, I created those out of some MFT Princess Pink cardstock, and I'm stamping in Wild Rose ink because again it has a little bit of that terracotta vibe, so that'll bring the front of the card to the inside. So I'm stamping down that same row of bunny images because I wanted this to be more of a springtime card, and the other images in this set didn't really suit. And then I used the sentiment that said, "Celebrate all good things." And once again, everything was all perfectly positioned, so I just went ahead and stamped this twice. I don't usually recreate cards. It's not something I do. Usually every card is unique, and in this case they still will be because they're going to have different pattern paper, but this is about as close to like mass producing as I come. You know, if that's good for you, that's totally fine. It's just not something that I usually enjoy, but today I just felt like doing it. So I trimmed down the base prints with the Lawn Fawn large stitch rectangle stackables, and then I use the stitch scallop borders from Lawn Fawn for the gingham pieces. And while I was trying to unclog my glue, I forgot to turn my camera back on when I glued those pattern papers back down. So I just glued those to the front of the focal panel. Then I'm adding some liquid glue to the gingham print and lining up those focal panels just above that, trying to use the gingham print as like a grid so that I get everything lined up nice and straight. And I wanted to leave enough of that gingham showing that you can see the pattern. So that's why I went up a little bit higher on those panels. Just made sure everything was lined up straightly. This one was just a little bit off on that gingham print, so I grabbed my cutter bee scissors and just trimmed off that tiny sliver of excess there on the right hand side so that everything was nice and flush. I thought about popping these up on the cards, and I do think that would be a cute look as well, but ultimately decided to keep them nice and flat for mailing, so I am just going to adhere those straight down to the card using some more liquid glue. And sorry about my hair there. I leaned forward to make sure that that was on there nice and straight, and a little bit got in the way there. But I'm just going to do the same with the other, just getting them both about the same position on the card, a little bit high of center just for something different. And then I can bring in my images, and I'm going to add some more liquid glue to the back of those using my Barely Art Precision Craft Glue. It has that super fine nozzle, so I'm able to get up in those little bunny ears and everything, which I really, really love. So I'm going to glue that right above the sentiment, so there's about the same amount of space below the sentiment as above the bunny's ears. So you see all of that nice speckled detail on either side. And then I'm going to do the same for the other card. To finish things off, I'm going to add just the tiniest bit of sparkle. I'm adding some Stardust Stickles to each of the leaves of those little plants. And my Stardust Stickles was getting clogged as well, so I just used the pin from my Barely Art glue to unclog that so that I could finish off this little card here. And then I also did the centers of the flowers down at the bottom. And then I'll do the same for the second card. So which card is your favorite? I don't know. I probably would prefer the one on the left just because I really love the bold floral. But I think the one on the right is really pretty as well. So you let me know down in the comments which one you prefer. I got a little too much stickles on one of those leaves. It came out of the bottle quickly once I squeezed too hard because of that clog. So I just used that pin to help reposition that. And there you can see a little bit of that sparkle and also the shine on the bunny's glasses. And of course, I'll give you another peek at the inside. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one, 2 for 1 today. So let me know if you did. Give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Ring that notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. I post new ones every Monday and Friday. If you're interested in any of these products, I'll have everything listed and linked in the description bar below, so you can just click and go shopping. And if you'd like to keep watching, here are 2 extra videos I thought you might also enjoy. You can click on either one to check them out. So thank you again so much for watching. I hope you all have an absolutely amazing day. Bye-bye.